Chris Hampton from the University of Kansas Center for Community Health and Development said, with over 54 million citizens making up their ranks, people with disabilities are the largest minority group in the United States. Accessibility is for everyone, not just those with disabilities. However, disabilities come in many shapes and sizes. One may not seem to have a disability, but you never know what somebody really is afflicted with until you ask them. I have had the pleasure of talking to many seniors at the center in Delaware County, and I have learned that a lot more of them have some sort of disability than it seems. There are several citizens who attend the center who are blind, several who use canes or walkers. One is in a wheelchair. Many have dementia or some sort of Alzheimer's or a mental deterioration or cognition. One with Down syndrome. Several with anxiety or depression. All of these things can be taken into account when thinking about accessibility and how we can make buildings more accessible for seniors. From visiting the Senior Center in Delaware County, I have noticed that there are lots of problems with accessibility regarding the building and the way that it is set up. Though it is a very old building, and it was built in 1914, I believe, it is very old and still remains to be one of the older buildings in Delaware County. However, as it is 2020 and we've had lots and lots of time to adjust to this new building, there's still many things that could be addressed and that would be easy and not expensive to fix. So, accessibility, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is the capability of being reached, also able to speak or to deal with, capable of being used or seen, and capable of being understood or appreciated. The main word here to focus on is capable. So, everyone has to walk, everyone has to move. Somehow, everybody needs to be able to manipulate and move around a building, no matter if they have a disability or not. And that is why accessibility is so important. Chris Hampton from the University of Kansas also said, increasing access means creating an environment that can be used by all people, including those who have disabilities. To me, this is very important to understand. Accessibility is not just for those who have disabilities, but rather for everyone, to ensure that everyone is getting the most out of the building and to ensure that everybody is getting the same opportunities. So let's get into some of the main points. First, I'm going to talk about the easy and inexpensive ways that we can improve our current facility. This will be through temporary fixes and additions to the building that can easily be done from volunteers or even just the staff at the center. Next, I'm going to talk about fonts and print styles that are accessible and can be used when printing brochures, publications, and updating the website. And then I will talk about a brief idea for a new future center. So first, we need to look at the numbers. For people's ages 65 and older, 35.2% had a disability. That comes from the Institute on Disability from UCED. 1 in 10 people ages 65 and older, that's 10%, has Alzheimer's dementia from the Alzheimer's Association. And from the Center for Disease Control, about 25% of Americans age 65 plus fall down. This leads to causing serious injury or death in many cases. So part 1 is going to be looking at temporary fixes for the current building. In this section, I'm going to outline some of the easiest and most cost-effective additions and fixes that can be made to the Senior Center in order to make it more accessible, not just for those with disabilities. First, we're going to start in the restroom. Everybody needs to use the restroom, there's no doubt about that. It is a non-controversial issue. Restrooms are an essential. Marina Kears of the Hendricks County Senior Center had mentioned to me several times in our interview about the seniors having difficulties with the restrooms. She's mentioned that a lot of the seniors really appreciate the ability to have larger, taller toilets in the bathroom. This extra height creates an ease of access, so they don't have to bend down as far to use the to use the toilet. They don't have to crouch all the way down and then stand all the way back up. It's just easy to get on and off without having to use your knees. And a lot of seniors, as we know, have difficulties with knees. That seems to be one of the first things that goes, is the muscle ability, the ability to easily carry your body weight by bending your knees, lowering your back, things like that. Grab bars are also something that's very important. So these two things go sort of hand in hand. Grab bars assist seniors in being able to bend down and stand back up. They can use those grab bars to pull themselves up from the toilet if they're too low. If they have difficulties. It also just helps with balance. And a lot of people appreciate having grab bars in restrooms. So grab bars usually range about $20 to $100 depending on who you buy them from. I have found some on Amazon for as low as $15, $20, and they're super easy to install. It just takes a drill and some screws, and I'm sure that Jimmy from the senior center, who manages all of the upkeep of the building, would be more than capable of putting in these grab bars. Another thing that is very helpful would be, like I said, those heightened toilets that are just a little bit taller to make it easier to get on and off. Those are a little bit more pricey, running from about $100 to $700. Again, this is depending on who you get them from, and I do not believe that this is taking into account having them installed. These are sort of something that may not be a necessity, but are very, very helpful, and this will come up again later when we talk about the future plans. Something else that could be very impactful but very inexpensive is an automatic soap dispenser. Many public places now have automatic soap dispensers. You just put your hand underneath, the sensor activates and drops the soap into your hand. These can be bought off Amazon for $20, but they range anywhere from $20 to $115 depending on who you buy them from, what level of quality you're looking for, and if you are wanting something that is easily interchangeable, that can be moved around, or something if you want it mounted to a wall. It all just depends on what kind of quality you're looking for. This one right here is just a Lysol. This one's probably about $20. It's a Lysol soap dispenser. I think actually my mom has one in her downstairs bathroom. They're really nice, pretty inexpensive, and they could be placed on the sinks in the bathrooms at the senior center. As you can see in the picture right here, there is a ledge, so they can be placed on the sinks there. Yeah. Another thing that could be very impactful is automatic paper towel dispensers. As you can see, the paper towel dispensers in the restrooms that they have currently are not automatic. You have to pull them down, and if they get jammed, you have to crank the little knob on the side until they work again. So automatic paper towel dispensers are super convenient. You just swipe your hand across and the paper towel comes out for you. They run from about $20 to $100 depending on where you buy them from, but they're pretty inexpensive and easy to work with. I know that just to change them, you just unlock it with a key, pop in a new roll of paper towels, and you're good to go. It's that simple. This would be super beneficial for seniors because they would not have to worry about pulling out the paper towels, worrying about getting the paper towels unjammed if there was a paper jam, or having to work with the tiny knob to dry their hands. This way they could just easily swipe their hand and go. So over here I have added 2 pictures of the current senior center restrooms that are accessible to the seniors that visit the center. So this restroom right here is the one, the women's restroom directly next to the dining room. So this restroom is very, very small. I actually am wider than the door frame. So in order to get into this restroom, you do have to sort of walk sideways. It's a very, very small restroom. No natural lighting. As you can see, they have the toilet paper dispenser right next to the toilet, so that's easy to access, but there's no grab bars, so getting down on these low toilets, which were put in place originally for elementary schoolers because the building was originally an elementary school. So These toilets are a little bit shorter than the average toilet bowl, so there's no grab bars, and expecting a senior to be able to get down, use the toilet, and get all the way back up, it's sort of a big ask. The paper towel dispensers are not automatic, and the soap dispenser is not as well. As you can see, even here, the sink sticks out past the door, and that is a problem. It causes an obstruction of the clear path, and overall, this restroom is just way too small to be considered an accessible restroom. However, this is the closest one to the dining room. But they do have another restroom that is far more accessible, but still houses a variety of issues. This is the second restroom. It is a multi-stalled restroom that is closer to the entrance of the main entrance of the building. There are two. There is a men's and there is a women's. In this restroom, there are 2 or 3 sinks, I believe, 2 paper towel dispensers, and the soap is housed on the sink. It's part of the sink, I believe. And then there's this kind of mirror, handy-dandy mirror there. And then there are 3 stalls, 2 regular, your average building stalls, and then a larger handicap accessible stall, which is large enough to get a wheelchair in, or there might be a changing table. I can't see on the picture, but there is some more natural lighting, so there is a window to the outside that's pretty high up, so you can't see through it, but natural light gets in, so it's a little less crowded than the first restroom. The sinks are mounted to the walls, which is nice, and is more accessible. As you can see, you could fit a wheelchair underneath it if you needed to, or a walker to help with balance. There are no grab bars in this restroom as well. The paper towel dispensers are not automatic, and the soap is even harder to use than one would expect. It is one of the kind that are housed on the sink, so you have to sort of put your hand out and press down with your other hand, so it's a bit of a hefty job to expect seniors to be able to do all the time. So that's about it for restrooms. Let's move on to lighting. Personally, lighting is one of the most fascinating things to me, as it has a lot of different uses and a lot of different effects on people, and I think it's really interesting to see how lights can truly affect somebody in any environment. According to Energy Performance Lighting, fluorescent lights may lead to headaches or migraine attacks, eye strain and inflammation, difficulty reading or focusing, nausea, feeling of anxiety and depression, disrupted sleep patterns, and more. Poor lighting is one of the things that I have seen very big in the Delaware County Senior Center. As you can see in this picture, this is the main hallway right outside that restroom that we just discussed. Right when you walk in through the main doors, you walk down to the main hallway, and this is the first thing that you see. If you look up on the ceiling, there are practically no lights. This is an air vent. This is an air vent. And I believe this one is also an air vent. There are no lights on the ceiling for at least another 10 feet this way. And then after this one is a large window. That does let some light in, but again, the lights are so spread out. The hallway is dimly lit, and being somebody that already is low vision, having several different seniors who have severe cataracts or mild blindness or going blind, things like that are very, very important to understand that lighting is crucial. These are the lights in the gymnasium. As you can see, they hang off of these 2 sort of lamp-like lights on the ceiling. They provide enough light in the gymnasium. However, the back area by the stage is less lit up because there are no lights back there. Luckily, they don't use that area as much for the seniors, more for storage, but it's still important to have good lighting throughout the entire building. Next, these are the lights. This is one long fluorescent light. I'm assuming it's a tube. I didn't have a chance to open it up and see what kind of light it was. I do know it is a fluorescent, though. So this fluorescent light is a tube and it stretches across the entire dining room. It does provide a good amount of light, but what I'm going to be talking about is a light cover or light diffuser that will create a better, more inviting environment. It's very common for fluorescent lights and light tubes to be seen in public buildings such as grocery stores and even in schools, and most universities use these sort of lights. They are cheap and easy to use, and they light up a room so bright. This has its benefits, as it does provide good lighting for people to be able to see what they're doing, see where they're going, all of those things, but it also is not very beneficial, as it does lead to lots of other negative effects. Some of those being headaches, like I said earlier, eye strain, difficulty reading or focusing, nausea, those feelings of anxiety and depression, and disrupted sleep patterns. All of these things are things that we see commonly in senior citizens, not just because of the lighting, but because of other impacts on their life that they should not have to deal with in the first place. So what is a light cover or a light diffuser? They come in many different shapes and sizes. These are some of the most common light diffusers that I see. A lot of times these are seen in special education classrooms in elementary and high schools. They are used a lot for children who have autism or learning disabilities. This helps just make them seem less bright, less sharp, but still providing that good lighting in the classroom. So light covers and light diffusers are a light scattering medium. This means when the light hits the fabric, it is not as direct. It's sort of like when you wear sunglasses and then look up at the sun. The sun is not going directly into your eyes, but it first travels through the sunglasses into your eyes. It's still very bright and not a good idea to look at the sun with sunglasses on, but it does protect your eyes a little bit more than what it would if you were to just stare at the sun with no sunglasses on. So this light scattering medium, the light hits the fabric and travels through the fibers of the fabric, softening the light, reducing the shadow and the sharpness of the light. These are very inexpensive. They range anywhere from $10 to $50. They come in many different colors and many different patterns. As you can see, this one is just a nice sky blue. That one is personally my favorite. It just sort of adds that nice calming blue, sort of calm light. It's very soft, very nice, and it's very inexpensive. These usually run about $30 for a pack of 3. These are a little bit more expensive just because they have that pretty pattern on it, but I have talked to many seniors and they all wish they could be in Florida right now. So I think having that little burst of happiness and sunshine, blue sky and clouds and a pretty palm tree would be something really, really cool for the seniors just to be able to look up and see, while also benefiting their physical and mental health because of the lighting. Now I'm going to talk about one of the first things that I noticed when I first entered the Delaware County Senior Center, and that was flooring and movement. So being able to move from place to place within the center is very, very important. I have noticed that there are many rugs in the building that do not stay on the floor very well. They tend to curl up in the corners and can be easily tripped on. The first time I visited the center, I actually did trip on this red rug that you see right here. I did trip on that rug just because I guess I wasn't paying attention very well. And I, tripped on a rug. And if I trip on a rug, I can only imagine how one of the seniors who maybe drag their feet a little bit more or aren't as agile as I am would trip and not be able to catch themselves if they were to fall. Marina Kears from the Hendrick County Senior Services also said in our interview that someone with dementia may walk in through the door and they may see that as a dark black hole in the ground. When we were talking about this, we were talking about the cheap black building rugs that are usually seen when you first enter a building. These are just the standard wipe your shoes on the rug, get the mud and water off before you go into the building. They're very, very inexpensive. They run from $10 to $100, again, depending on where you buy them from, but they're a standard in most public buildings. I see them in grocery stores, I see them in schools, I see them virtually everywhere because they are the most inexpensive way of getting getting that barrier between the outside and the inside. However, I think a lot of times this doesn't come into, I think a lot of times that people don't think about the fact that there are people who would see this as a hole in the ground, or people who would see this as an obstacle rather than just a way to wipe their feet. And that is why I was so amazed when I found Floor rugs. So Floor, F-L-O-R rugs, are tiled rugs. They are low pile texture, so they're very easy to move across. They're rubber back, they don't slip or slide, they stay firmly to the ground. They're very easy to clean and rearrange, as you can just take off one, throw it in the washer, and pull it back out. They're wheelchair and walker accessible. They're basically flush to the ground, so if you were to roll a cart or a wheelchair or a walker over the edge of the rug, it would not move. It is slip resistant. They are stuck to the ground with these stickers right here that they provide with the rug with each tile. These stickers are amazing. They keep the rug on the floor, keep them from moving around, and they honestly have some of the most amazing textures and variety of patterns, and they're really, really interesting. This pattern right here, this light, it's just this nice light pale blue, I think is an excellent pattern for the senior center. It's non-abrasive, it's very easy to see, and the seniors would have no difficulty seeing it and being able to walk over it. It would get dirty, it would need to be cleaned, but it would be very, very nice to have an accessible non-slip rug that is not as intense as these dark colored black brown rugs that could act as an obstacle or some sort of, you know, scary illusion for some of these seniors. Something else that I have thought about a lot is the threshold ramps. You can't see it very well in this picture, but right here there is a little bit of a divot between these two rooms where the ground is a little bit raised from where they added on this section of the building. These are very common in especially older buildings that have been built on. And these are also very common in homes, which I know this isn't necessarily a home, but I have seen many of these around, however. So when you first walk in, there is sort of a threshold where in order to get up, sometimes you have to step up just a slight bit, even if it's not 2 inches, it's still a lot for a wheelchair or somebody with a walker or someone with bad knees who sort of drags their feet more when they walk. That is why threshold ramps I have found to be very impactful. They run anywhere from $10 to $50, and you could even make them yourself out of plywood. They're very inexpensive, they're wheelchair accessible for doorways, and they just honestly create a safer alternative for these thresholds for seniors. We've noticed that they tend to drag their feet or shuffle more when they walk, and having these thresholds would be much easier and much safer for them. Marina Kears from the Hendricks County Center also mentioned to me that most of the complaints that she has heard from the seniors at the center is that their doors are too heavy. When we talked, she did mention a lot that since they have a newer center, it's about, I believe it's about 8 years old, their center is equipped with fireproof doors. Now, the Delaware County Senior Center is not equipped with fireproof doors. However, the doors that we have are very thick, very hard wood, and they do weigh quite a bit. They are not fireproof doors, however, they do weigh a lot, and I have noticed that some seniors do struggle with the doors. Even I struggled with the doors at the center, and I can only imagine having to do that while holding a cane or holding a walker, or even just while not having the same strength that I do currently. That is why door stops are a very, very easy way to keep these doors open so that seniors don't have to worry about being able to open them on their own. There are cheap door stops that you can place in the front of the door. Those cost anywhere from, less than $5, even up to like $15, depending on the quality again. But those are more intrusive to the pathway. And so those could easily be knocked out by a wheelchair, or, somebody kicks it and the door closes and somebody's stuck inside. So these sort of door stops that have the hook and the latch for the wall run anywhere from $10 to $50 depending on the quality and who you buy them from, but they're very easy to install, and they could easily hold open a door, a restroom door, the dining room door, any of the activity rooms or the gymnasium could easily have these accessible door stops. They are out of the way on the back of the door, so it keeps the door open and allows the seniors to freely move in and out with much ease, and it also keeps our seniors safe and healthy. Here are other few sort of smaller additions or changes that are very, very easy and relatively inexpensive that improve the accessibility of the building. Lever doorknobs. Now, these may seem silly, but lever doorknobs are super, super nice, especially in a building that needs to be accessible. They are easy to handle. They're very easy to press down with an arm or a palm, so you don't necessarily have to use your hand. But they're very easy to maneuver and a lot easier than the circular doorknobs. Many seniors don't have the same motor skills that we have. Most seniors don't have the same motor skills that younger adults have. That is just because of age, and generally their muscles tend to deteriorate a lot faster, and there's really nothing we can do about that except make things a lot easier for them if we at all can. These lever doorknobs are an excellent way to do that. They run anywhere from $8 to $20. You could even just buy them at Lowe's for very, very cheap. They can be installed without help. They can be installed by anyone, really, as long as you know how to work a screwdriver. So they're easy to install, very inexpensive, and very, very accessible. The seniors would not have to wrap their hands around the knob and turn. They just have to press down and open if the doors are closed. And that does relate back to the door stops, which again we would like to see if we could at all incorporate the door stops during the busier times to keep the doors open for seniors. Something else that I have noticed there isn't a lot of in the senior center is Braille signage. So Braille signage is super inexpensive, $6 to $20. It's very accessible and it's ADA compliant. So most buildings, most public places, and most public buildings do have Braille signage, simply to appease the ADA, I believe, to appease ADA Section 504. To appease the American with Disabilities Act. The next thing is hallway clearance. So this is one of the easiest and surefire ways to keep our seniors moving and keep our seniors in a safe and accessible space as much as we possibly can. Going back to this picture, I would like to point out that there are a lot of problems in this picture. Many of the things are because of the clutter. As you can see, this is a kitchen sort of serving table, and the last time that I asked Judy or anybody about it, they did not use it. They were simply using it here and keeping it in storage. They also have this other fridge, which is their I believe this is their small food pantry. They have many of these white tables and a lot of just other clutter in the hallway. This is a very inaccessible hallway. As you can see, it's fairly short already. Besides the windows here, which is the natural lighting, there is no other lighting in this hallway. It is very hard to walk through, even for somebody who is highly able-bodied, a young adult, someone who has very good reflexes and skills. It would be difficult to walk down this hallway in a group simply because there is so much going on. And the same goes for this hallway. There are chairs lined up and down the hallway, whiteboards, racks of clothing. There's some bookshelves over here, and right behind me where I was standing in this picture, there was a piano in the hallway. So These hallways do need some clearing and some decluttering, but it's a very, very easy task. They just need to get rid of the things they no longer need, find a new place for storage, and all of this can be achieved. I know some of my peers have been working on their projects as well and have been working on things similar to the decluttering and helping them keep organized. And so we're going to move on from that, but it is something that is very easy. And especially working together with volunteers can be done very, very quickly and efficiently. So next I'm going to be talking about accessible fonts and print styles. So I'm going to outline some of the ADA compliant fonts, colors, and print styles that could be incorporated for the brochures, pamphlets, calendar, website, any of that sort of advertisement. So what is the ADA? The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 was enacted in order to preserve the rights of those with disabilities and end discrimination against them. This is a civil rights law, so it provides rights within 5 sections, 2 of which being employment and government. Those are the 2 that are the primary sections, but there are many others like telecommunications, education, lots of other stuff like that. So the ADAA was passed in 2009. This is called the Americans with Disabilities Act, Amendment Act. It's kind of a silly name, but it adds significant changes to the ADA's original disability standards, and a lot of the stuff that is in the ADAAA comes in, especially when dealing with senior citizens and the disabilities that they may have. Oops. So some of the key things for ADA compliance for signs are making sure that all of the fonts are in sans serif fonts. Basically what that means is when you have a non-sans serif font, this font right here actually is right on the border of being a non-sans serif font, but I can show you a non-sans serif. So these are some serif fonts, which are not, these are non-sans serif fonts. As you can see, they have a lot of these little ticks. They are script, very decorative, flary, sort of, your exciting, fun fonts that you would generally see on a sign. But that is unfortunately not, those signs are unfortunately not accessible. So having a sans serif font is very important for people who have dyslexia, people who have vision problems, and people who simply are maybe blind or need a little bit of extra help with reading signs, especially due to old age. No italics, obliques, script, highly decorative, or other unusual forms or fonts. This is something that's very important, especially for important signs like like marking signs, like emergency exits, restrooms, handicapped available signs. They need to be mainly in all caps. This is not including things like this, like the list of names. This is, all caps is referring to the important information on the signs, like restroom, emergency exit, suites, the name of the room. Generally, these sort of signs have raised characters and braille. This was from Sarah Vines of Zag Interactive. Zag Interactive is a website and company based in Connecticut that specializes in digital and print. So here is a list of some highly recommended and easily accessible fonts. Verdana, Georgia, Lucida Grande, Tahoma, Helvetica, Arial, Tahoma, again, Candara, Century Gothic, even Comic Sans and Garamond. These are all fonts that are ADA compliant for websites and print. These were available from the Accessibility at Penn State. Sorry, some of them are repeated. That is my bad. This is just sort of a list of what the fonts look like and how you can tell sort of the difference between a compliant font and a non-compliant font. And this right here is just another example of, I think it is Helvetica, just another compliant font. So some of the things that we need to remember when we're making websites and prints that are ADA compliant for these seniors is the first thing is 1.5 to 2 times spacing is enough room for them to be able to switch from line to line with ease. and still be able to read, but it's not too close together to where it looks clumped and they easily could get confused or mixed up on where they're reading. Another thing, left alignment when possible. That's what I have going on right here. So having all of the words shifted so that everything is aligned at the left besides tabs and bullet points. That just makes it a lot easier for seniors to follow along. Since we read from left to right, we can easily see where a sentence starts and where it ends. 14 to 18 point font is the minimum that is compliant with ADA and is the most readable for those who have trouble seeing or even those who are just a little bit older. 12 point font seems to be the go-to font size. However, 14 to 18 point is the average size for the best readability. It can be bigger, but if you are trying to put a lot of text onto the page, these are going to be your best numbers. So some contrast or opposite sides of the color wheel when you're having colors on your pages or on your website is very important, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more here in the next slide. So avoiding hyphens whenever possible. I mean, if it's part of a word, that's acceptable, but avoid using hyphens to break up sentences when that's not needed, or to break up paragraphs. That just makes it a little cleaner and a lot easier to read. Having Braille and audio versions accessible to those who need them are a really good way to make sure that everybody is included and that everybody has access to the material. So getting things printed in Braille is really easy, pretty cost effective, but having an audio version is a lot easier. You just have somebody record them reading it, just like I'm recording now, and then somebody who's blind or somebody who is hard of seeing, hard of hearing could easily listen back or, do whatever they need to and have that version available to them. Using graphics and images to help break up sections of the text is also something that I know the Senior Center already does, but it's very important to keep in mind that they're using them responsibly. So on the next slide, I'll have some pictures of that as well. Some added symbols of accessibility when they're available is also important. So having a accessibility sign at the top of the website saying that there is an audio version available, something having on the brochure that they pass out to the seniors, making sure that they know that their building is accessible by putting the accessibility sign on the front. That's just something that they could easily do to make sure that people understand that they are included and that they do have access to these things. So here's a good example of an accessible online and a print document. This is from Sarah Vines again from Zag Interactive. As you can see, the colors are very contrasting. So we have this darker blue, green, teal backed up by this white, and then you have the grays and the blacks. These grays are actually a little light for print, but for web, as long as they're this or a little bit darker, they should be good to go. Having black font on white background is perfect. Even this green, it's still easy to read. The picture is blurry, but if it weren't blurry, it would still be pretty easy to read. As you can see, graphics and images are used here to break up the text. They use a chart here to break up these paragraphs and make it seem more laid out, more easy to read. There's plenty of white space. Everything is left aligned, and there's no added symbols that don't need to be there. So looking at the color wheel and some ADA accessible colors. So on the left right here, this is a picture of the color wheel. This is pretty much the color wheel that I remember using when I was in elementary school when you learn the colors. Basically, when you're looking at finding accessible colors, you're wanting to look for colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheel. So take yellow and violet, for example. The yellow you can see is very light. It's a very happy color, and then the violet is going to be very dark and contrasting with that yellow. This pink is going to be very contrasting against this blue. However, it may not be the most accessible, but it's still on the opposite side of the color wheel, and this one was going to be darker than this So over here on the right, we can see some color examples of things that are accessible on white and things that are accessible on black. So some colors that are accessible on white are going to be these really dark colors that show up very easily against a white background. You can see that the check marks are very clear within these colors, and it kind of just helps you see. And then these that have the circles in them are sort of just showing you like a few things that might work on white but aren't the best picks. And the same goes for the black. So all of these black check marks, you can see that they show up really, really well against these colors, and then there's these that they show up a little bit, but maybe not as much as you'd like. How are all of these things possible to implement with limited funding? The first way that I've been looking into this is through donors. Community donors to assist in purchasing and investing in these accessibility additions is something that many people have used in the past. I know Marina and I talked in our interview about this, and the Hendricks County Senior Services has received many they have received many donations from donors in the past, and that is sort of how they got to where they are today. Having these donors and these people to back them when they need assistance financially or just community support, it can go a long way, even if it's just a little bit. And I think looking for these donors and asking for assistance in investing and purchasing accessibility additions could be a really good way of not only getting involved in the community, but also getting the financial assistance that they need. Another way is through volunteers. So community members and other volunteers can help build and apply these additions. So not all of the things that we have seen need to be purchased. As I mentioned before, for example, the temporary, the threshold ramps or the door stops, those are all things that can be made. Having a community member or another volunteer help to build and apply those additions to the buildings could be super simple. Just asking around for the families of the seniors that attend the center, those who have people in their lives who care about them, maybe they could, purchase a hand soap dispenser or a paper towel dispenser, or even just assist in setting it all up and making sure that we are getting the community involved and making sure that everybody understands that accessibility is not just for the seniors, and that by making this building accessible, it will be accessible for everyone. Another way to do this is through Ball State affiliations. Talking with Dr. Jones, her husband is the lead of the College of Construction Management student. Another way to do this is through Ball State affiliations. The College of Construction Management could be a huge help in this project as they manage accessibility in buildings and manage the construction of buildings that are accessible. So getting their input on how to make this building more accessible, how to implement these strategies and make this building the most accessible that we can without completely renovating or rebuilding would be a huge help. Even just asking around for student organization involvements, I'm sure that there are plenty of fraternities or sororities that would be more than happy to volunteer their time with the center, maybe help paint rooms or, help install new lights or doorknobs, just really small stuff that Ball State can be a part of. I know Student Council for Exceptional Children works with students with exceptionalities and disabilities a lot, and so we have many connections with the special education department and special education services. So a lot of the services that they have for students with disabilities can be incorporated into the senior center to assist with the accessibility, and I think that could be a really interesting way of approaching this issue. So getting student organizations involved in the College of Construction Management, and there's many other areas on campus that could potentially be of huge help to the center. Lastly, I'm going to talk briefly about the future. As you can see, I don't have any actual pictures of the senior center. This is because there is no new senior center yet. So like I said earlier, this building has been around for a very long time. There is a complete other half of the building that they do not have access to, they cannot use, and it's sort of a mess. The oldest part of the building is falling apart. The walls and ceilings are peeling and there's holes, and it's sort of at this point past the point of repair to where it would cost just as much money to repair the whole building than it would be to build a new one. This is why I think that thinking about building a new senior center is something that should really be considered, especially when thinking about this, because at this point, though it would cost maybe a couple $1,000,000 to rebuild a new center and a new sanctuary for these people, it is so important that they are getting the most out of their time at the senior center, and they are getting the most out of this building that they can. And if they can't even get into the building without difficulties, they can't even use the restroom, they can't even go and have a nice meal without getting a constant migraine from the lighting, these are all little things that could drastically impact their time at the center. I think when thinking about a future center, we need to think about how are we going to make this accessible. Simple things like having automatic doors, having ramps outside, having people who are just there to help, having those high-rise toilets, having those accessible signs in bathrooms, and having those accessible programs in print and the website are all things that are very easy to accomplish and very important to accomplish in order to keep this senior center to be the most accessible and to be the most successful for these seniors. So now is the time that we need to come together and use these strategies to make a better senior center for our seniors.